Blog Talk Radio.
Everyone to episode 154 of Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. Thanks everyone for tuning in. Hope that your weekend is starting off on a good note. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and it is Friday, July the 30th, 2021, when this is being recorded. And I want to dive straight in here tonight. Got a great guest, one of my favorite poets out there, one of the most consistent and prolific poets on the scene. You'll see his work everywhere. Quinn Flanagan is a Canadian-born author who lives in Elliott Lake, Ontario, Canada, with his wife and many bears that rifle through his garbage. His work has appeared both in print and online in such places as the New York Quarterly, Evergreen Review, the Peregrine Muse, the Blue Mountain Review, Setu Mag, and the Oklahoma Review. He enjoys listening to the blues and cruising down the Trans-Canada in his big blacked-out truck. And with that, I want to welcome Quinn Flanagan to the show. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for having me on, brother. I've been waiting to be on for a long time because I got a lot of respect for your work as well. So
I appreciate that. It's definitely mutual, and yeah, this is a long time coming. So been looking forward to this opportunity to get to talk about your work, which I've been following for many years now before we even met online, and I get to pick your brain a little bit because you've been at this several more years than I have, and I've been keeping that consistency going for so long, and I guess maybe that's a good place to dive in. Tell us a little bit about yourself first, and then talk about that consistency, how you stay motivated to keep churning out the work like you do.
Yeah, well, first off, I'm like you said, I'm from Elliott Lake, Ontario, Canada, so very small, basically cut out of the wilderness, a failed mining town. So that right there gives you plenty of opportunity to work because you're pretty isolated, and you have a lot of time to work. And we've been up here about, I guess, 13 years now, something like that. And yeah, with the consistency, it's just like, you know, the writing part is one part of it, but then there's the whole grind. There's the other part too that you have to connect with publishers. You have to send out the work. In the old days, it was really labor intensive and wasn't very cost effective because you had to do the envelopes and the self-addressed stamps. And now it's pretty much online, so that's a lot easier and saves a lot of time. But yeah, I think we've both been at this for a really long time. So you know, we got some white hairs from it, I'm sure, but you know, it's part of the process. It's what you have to do. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of back before all these online journals came into effect, what it was like having to go through that process of sending things out by the snail mail, and I'm sure waiting a long time in some cases to get the reply if you even ever do, and how that transition came about once the online journals did come into play.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, early on it was real snail mail, and you just had to look out all the old addresses you could find, the different places, and you get all the envelopes, get your submissions together. Everybody usually had their preferences, anything from font to the way the thing is presented to what's put in footnotes, letterheads, everything else. And then you send everything out, self-addressed stamp and everything. And like you said, most of the time you didn't even hear back. Most of them I never heard back. The ones you did hear back from early on certainly they were probably about 90% rejections. And then you'd get a few acceptances, and then you just do it all again, start the process again. But I'd say to this day, the ones that you say you sent off in like the mid 2000s, you still haven't heard back from. I don't even know if they're still journals or if they're operating, but you never heard back from them, most of them. And actually, the first one that I actually got an acceptance from was the New York Quarterly, which was kind of cool. But yeah, most of them you just never hear back from at all. Like I have an index upstairs of all the submissions you sent off, and there's just like, I don't know, maybe 1,000 of them. There's a lot of them, but I have the envelopes with originals and stuff, but never heard back from basically most of them, pretty much, probably 7/10 of them, maybe.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's a lot more accountability with editors now, knowing that everyone sees each other online. You can't just duck and run from things.
Yeah.
Put in the time.
It's so connected that all the writers know the publishers, they know the editors and the artists and everything else. So and people talk in the community. So you probably have to follow up with things now where you probably didn't in the old days. And but now, like you said, it's so connected. Everybody knows everybody, and it's just better to be couth and do that anyway. But in the old days, it certainly wasn't like that. It was like the Wild West.
So when the online journals did come into play, I guess, was there more instant gratification to it? And did that up the ante of wanting to send out even more? Or it sounds like you already were firing a lot off at that point.
Yeah. It was just it didn't up the ante for me to want to send out anymore, but it was a lot easier, and certainly in terms of time and money, because it wasn't cost effective to do it the other way. Yeah. But yeah, it opened up a lot of things. The internet, it has a lot of bad things, but some of the good things certainly is, one, you get to connect with people that you would never know, great writers like yourself, and you meet them. And you connect with the editors as well on a kind of a more personal level than you did in the old days before this switched over. But it's a lot more interactive now. Certainly cost effective, saves a lot of time. There's all kinds of advantages for writers nowadays, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And so sending the submissions off is one part of the process, but in order to be able to do that, you got to have the material first, which you obviously are writing a lot. I've read in past interviews of yours the idea about hypergraphia, is it called? The condition of writing. Can you talk about how that plays into your life and how that affects what you do?
Yeah, I guess it works for the good in what we do, but it filters over into everything. Like I'll have notes and lists on things that have nothing to do with writing. I write all over envelopes, stick-it notes, oatmeal packages, and it's always been like that. Just writing stuff everywhere. Some that doesn't even have to do with writing, and a mix of OCD as well. So you throw those two in. I guess they can be helpful for work ethic in this industry, but they are supposed to be negative things, and you certainly add up a lot of notes all over the place after a while.
Well, that's cool. You've been able to turn it into a sort of alchemical process and use it for something good. Is that something that's always been with you since you were young?
I've always been writing. I think the first time was poetry, because of course you don't know really what writing is. But I was like 10, and I did a poem because you had to do. I don't know if you guys had to do it, but back in school you had to do speeches each year, public speaking, and then they had one where you had to do poetry, and of course everybody hated the poetry one in the class. And I basically, you could just pick a poem. So each year, I would probably 6 out of the 10 in the class would do Casey at the Bat, and do that. But I was the only one who wrote my own poem, and then did my own poem. And I guess they were impressed enough by doing that it sucked for me because I was so scared about doing it in the first place. And then when I did it, they said, "Oh, that's so good." They kept making me go around to all the classrooms and do it for the other classes. And then they were, I had to do it in front of the Lions Club and like all these things. And they published it in the paper and all this shit. Right? and I was so nervous for the first time. And then it just got worse all the other times because, I'm not a very public person. So that became a nightmare. But after that point, I just continued writing. Like obviously nothing serious. You don't really know what writing is, but you enjoyed the mechanism, so you just keep doing it over and over. And I guess after a few decades, you get all right at it. But
So with all those like itemized lists and jotting down that you're doing on whatever piece of paper is in front of you, I guess, do you go back and turn that type of stuff into poems later on, or do you have a different process with your poetry?
Yeah, that's exactly what I used to do. I used to go back through all the old notes and then do it from there. Now, I kind of make, I still make notes, but it's on full pieces of paper now. So we've graduated to being acceptable enough to use full pieces of paper. We don't have to pull out the oatmeal packets anymore. Because I can pull those ones out from like a decade ago, and you read these lines, and it's like, what the hell does that mean? That's not helpful at all. But and then it'll be right beside a grocery list, So I don't do that as much anymore. But I have full pieces of paper sitting in most rooms, and with pens and stuff, and just in case, so you can jot notes like most of us do, and then go back to them at least pretty quickly now, instead of like sitting for a long time where it gets away from you and then you go back to it and you don't really feel it or have an idea of what you were talking about. But yeah, earlier on it was really not a refined process. It was just write it down, come back, pick through oatmeal packets and stick it notes and try to find things. And I think you refine it over time, you get a better system. So it's a little better now.
Cool. And do you tend to have a set time that you write during the day, or do you come at it from a certain angle? Any like rituals or routines that you have in your process?
Oh yeah. On writing days, never shower. Shower on the off days or whatever. But yeah, get up, eat the same meal, basically the oatmeal, which goes with the packets. But eat that, and then don't shower. And then I usually just read something to get in the right mindset or cadence, and then sit down and have a few drinks, wine or beer or whatever, and sit and write, usually for about 5 or 6 hours, and then done, and then go down, have dinner, and call it a day. And then you just kind of recover the next day. Shower, of course, and then you repeat process whenever you can. Write as many days as you can if you can free them up, and just repeat that process. Eat the same thing, do the same thing over and over again.
Right on. It's a very workman's-like attitude, of almost like clocking in.
Yeah.
Putting the hours in, the dedication, and that's one of the things you got to do if you want to have the consistency that you have as a writer.
Yeah. It's not always the most romantic thing, but it's how I found it best. I know earlier on too, I used to write at night, so I'd start the process, and then I'd usually start writing about 9 o'clock at night till about 3:30 in the morning, something like that, when I could. And then now it's easier for me. I write during the day, and usually start about early afternoon till about 7 or something like that. So the time is totally switched, but the rituals kind of stayed the same within that. But now apparently I'm a day writer. Before I couldn't write during the day, I could write at night. But.
So when you're going in and putting in like 6 or 7 straight hours of writing, are you coming in with topics or themes that you've already been like running around in your head, or are you just sitting down and letting the stream of consciousness come to you and just take it where it goes?
Bit of both. Some days I'll go in totally blind and just sit down and pour some drinks and just let it grease the wheels, and then whatever comes, and that's helpful. Other days I'll have a few of the written notes that I've made, and I'll go from there. I'll probably work from those notes until I finish them, and then at the end I'll just grease the wheels again, let it flow, see what comes again. So it's a mix of them. But yeah, those days are the most fun, where you just go up with like no notes, no ideas, and just sit down, open the window or something, and then just see what hits you. That's the most fun. It's just very stream of conscious, like you said, right?
Right on. I call it trusting in the process. It can be sort of difficult for people to think that words are just going to come, but it's that consistency and steadiness of when you do it enough times, you have that sort of subconscious belief in yourself that you just know, even if there's nothing on my mind, something is going to come eventually. It always does in the past, and so it's going to flow out this time as well.
It's like building up some kind of subconscious muscle memory. Like you're just kind of like if you were to physically work out, but you're doing it instead with writing. So you just kind of build, somewhere down there's that muscle memory. At least that mechanism is there, and you'll churn. Eventually, you'll do something, right?
Right on. So you talk about reading a little bit to get in the right cadence. Any particular authors that you use to draw that initial inspiration?
Yeah, a whole bunch. Philip Larkin, Richard Brodigan, Bukowski, Fanti, E. Cummings, Frank O'Hara, Leonard Cohen. There's probably others. W.H. Auden, a bunch of them. But just whatever you're feeling that day, I guess, just pull something off and read it. It's really just to get in that mindset, get yourself out of the everyday mindset that you kind of have to be in to be a normal, functional person. And
Right.
just, kind of get in the mindset of just sitting and reading for a bit, and then that you kind of get into yourself, you know what I mean? You just kind of retreat into yourself, and then you're ready to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So you have your own voice now and a unique style that sort of, you can tell when it's a Flanagan poem. But can you speak a little bit to sort of the beginning, as I've seen this in one of your interviews too, where you talk about how we all start as mimicking other people in the beginning, and then we learn and adapt and eventually come through with our own style and our voice emerges. Can you talk about how long that process takes and sort of when you know that you've found, your pinpoint style and it's really coming from your soul?
Yeah. Like I said, I started really early writing, but of course you had no idea what writing is. You certainly didn't have your own voice at 10 or whatever. But you go through and then you find things. Like I didn't know anything about writing. I didn't come from an artistic family, or a town for that matter. So I didn't know anything about the arts. But then you stumble upon things over time, and certain writers, and they really blow your mind. And then so you start to say, okay, and then you look at their work, and you start to just swallow all that up, and then you move on. You find other writers. So sometimes those writers will recommend other writers, and then you see those writers, and you see what's out there, and you obviously have a few favorites, and you'll find that your early work kind of mimics that to a degree, different writers, and then it just kind of retreats into its own. Eventually, you get confident enough. I don't know, for everybody it's probably different, but for me, I think it takes a long time to do that. I think, like for me, it probably, I would say about 10 years ago, maybe, is when I felt confident enough that it was pretty much completely my own voice. But that would be 34 or 33. And then that's since the age of 10. So, it takes a long time to do these things and go through the process, and it's very labor intensive, I think. But maybe other people find it faster. I know for me it took a long time, I think.
Yeah, I've been through that similar experience, and I still find those voices sometimes creeping in, but instead of being a mimicry after a certain point, it's almost like it's still an homage that you have just kind of hanging there, lingering in the background, like throw some Hunter S. Thompson, gibberish in there, something like that.
Oh yeah, there's another one. But yeah, all those things are parts of you, right? Because when you're growing up, don't forget, they're hitting you when you're most impressionable as well.
Yeah.
When you're getting these influences, so I'm sure they never really leave you, and they become a part of you, just like things do in life. When you experience them, they kind of stick with you, and they're just a little part of you, which is kind of cool for the arts. that those things would stay with you and kind of form a new person in a way, with that little bits going on. And so yeah, I'm sure those parts are always there.
Yeah, I always thought of it a little bit too, is sort of that everything under the sun has been done type of mentality, but we're all unique and individual in the way that we connect the dots of our different influences. Like there's a big black board up there with all these dots on it, and to become individual, you're just taking different angles from here and there and combining them in your own way at first to sort of create that initial core, and then it eventually, as you were just speaking to, turns into that more solid voice. It's more on your own straight and narrow. But I want to get back to, you've been writing since the age of 10, and if you didn't come from a artistic family or a writing family in particular, what do you think gave you the impetus to stick with it, and what was it about writing that you connected with back then that wanted to, I guess, be a writer?
Yeah, originally, like I said, it was, I looked at the poems like everybody was doing, pick a poem and then recite it, and I just didn't, maybe we just didn't have the right books in the library or something, but I didn't like any of the poems. And so then I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just sit and I'll write one myself. And I did that. And then the mechanism felt great more than anything else. Like the subject matter obviously wasn't that good, of course, and anything else. And certainly I didn't like reciting it. That was scary as hell. But the original writing of it, and then when it was done, you just got that feeling inside, it felt really good. And so I just carried that over the years. Like I'd even be, in my teenage years, I'd be at parties and people would be hanging around, listening to music, drinking, doing what they're doing. And I'd be drinking with them too, but I'd be sitting there copying out my things and writing in the notebooks, just sitting, still working away because I hadn't finished for the day. Yeah. But because it was just the mechanism of writing really at that point, right? I didn't really know what writing really was or anything like that, but I enjoyed the mechanism of doing it. So and that's probably the hypergraphia, but it felt good though too to do it. So I would just continue doing it over and over and over again, and filling books and books. And that was more than anything. It was the mechanism that I enjoyed.
Was there a certain point or turning event that made you decide that you wanted to start sending it out and trying to publish?
I had seen that some people did that. So that's how I became aware that you could. I knew a few other writer people, and they would talk about this, or editors and that, and so then I started looking at that and that you could do that. So we started, but of course you have no idea what you're doing at the start. So you're sending out like your first work to the Paris Review, and things, it's just not going to go good at all. But it's what you're doing, and of course they're all mail out, so all old stuff, but most you never hear back from, of course, and the ones you do, it's not very good. But you learn as you go along. Like that's just like the writing process. You learn with the submissions as well, and the editing. You learn what works best for you personally while you're editing, what works best for submissions. It's just a thing you learn over time. You try to refine the process of all the things. But certainly early on the submissions, you just starting, you're going, oh yeah, the Paris Review, I think I'll send some poems this way,
Go goals.
Yeah.
So obviously you've got a great deal of material, and you send it out to all the different print and online journals and get published consistently. So how do you know, because you also put out so many books, how do you know when you have the material that's going to go toward a certain collection, and how many are you generally working on at the same time? How many projects do you have juggling at any given time?
Yeah, when I'm writing the books, I normally try to work on a book through a period of time. So like you just do the poems while you're writing, and then those go in that book, and there's not really too much of a connecting theme. But if there is ones where they obviously go, then you kind of move them around a bit, because I am a bit crazy with the amount of projects that you'll be working on at one time. Like, I got it down now, but for a while there, it was like 16 books at a time that were in various degrees of being finished. And you're working on them all at the same time. So, and that's just not healthy. I mean, that's not going to help anybody. But, that's what I was doing. And now I got it down probably to about, right now, I'd say maybe 8, about half that.
Yeah.
But,
still quite a few.
Oh yeah, still. I'd like to just get them done, get them out, and then just work on 1 or 2 at a time. That would be really nice. But it's funny, you get the urge and you just start writing a new one. Or you get an idea, you start writing a new one. I'm sure you know how it is. You write a lot too, so you get these ideas and then you switch it up. You get excited about that idea and you start doing that too, and then eventually you look back and you have a lot of projects on the go.
Right on. I know you put out 2 books in particular, with Alien Buddha, the Vegas collections. Can you talk a little bit about those and those trips you took with your wife down there? Any stories that stick out from those experiences?
Oh yeah. Vegas is great. Vegas is awesome for a writer, because you can just go and be like a fly on the wall, and people, for whatever reason, people don't act like they normally act at home, because they're in Vegas. So what stays in Vegas, they think, and they act crazy all the time. And it's so awesome for a writer. I mean, you could go there and there's just material for days. All you got to do is walk around and people watch, and then they're just doing the craziest things. And, what they say, be careful, because there could be a writer around. But in Vegas, they don't seem to care about that. So, we had all kinds of things there, just craziness all the time. We had one night, we had an escort come to our door, and to our hotel room door, and my wife was in the bathroom, and I answered the door, and she's looking for Sven, and I'm like, yes, Sven's not here. And then she gets out her day planner. Well, I called it her night planner because but she's like, totally business. She's like, no, it's Sven for half and half for 120. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm here with my wife, so I don't know where Sven is. And then she marched off. She was like yelling and down the hallway, just crazy. So Sven screwed her with the wrong hotel room. But and another one, I remember coming into the casino, and there was a guy there, probably a stag party, and he was there with his friends, and they're gambling at the craps table, and they're throwing all kinds of money around. But he's wearing a hat that says "I miss prison sex" on his head, and right in the middle of the casino. And there's another one. I saw a guy lose $500,000 in about an hour and a half.
Oh, damn.
Like spending the money you see lost there is just crazy. That actually just made me feel bad. But the crazy stories too. Bathrooms, you go into bathrooms and the stall's taken because people are shooting up and squirting the blood needles all over the walls and stuff. I mean, it's pretty crazy. You go down to Fremont Street and you got all the street performers, but they'll be dressed in like leotards with 3-for-1 daiquiris, and there'll be there's a guy, I think he tries to fold himself into a pail for money. It's just the weirdest world you've ever seen. But it's great for those books. So when I wrote those books, they're just like party vacation books. They're fun to write.
In everyday life, working those into your poetry, how do you combine that with personal work, and what's the percentage of how much you take from those two different paths?
I find for me, I normally do most of it from experience, like the Vegas poems and the Paris poems. Those ones are just straight from experience of what happened. There's basically very little jazzing up. I mean, Vegas, you don't need to jazz it up. They just pretty much write themselves. And then there are the personal pieces. I tend to do them a lot less, so I'm not an overly emotional writer. I find there's some surreal ones too. Sometimes I like to do some surreal pieces just to really stretch the mind and have some fun with it. But the majority, I think, is really kind of is more narrative right now. I think on everyday life and things that happen or you see around you or people say, those type things. And obviously with them, you have to jazz them up or spruce them up in some way because, otherwise you're just like a journalist with a notepad and you might as well just do straight dictation on what someone said on the street, right? But, there's different types, like you go through phases that you like to do, right? Like you'll be in a surreal mood or you'll be more narrative or prose poems or different forms you'll play with, all kinds of things like that. And I'm sure you have the same thing. You kind of get in a different headspace and you just do different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And for you, do those all sort of play together? I guess different moods you're saying come at any given time. Have there been different phases though throughout your whole life as a writer where you've been more focused on just one in particular? And have there been any sort of pivotal moments of like changes in your work or that you saw where your direction was shifting that you look back on and like see a stylistic jump point anywhere?
Yeah, definitely. I think early on I would do some more symbolic work, a lot of metaphor, stuff like that. And then early 20s probably switched to more narrative. Then you realized later on that you could do more personal experiences and write about that. And then at one point I saw Bill Bassett's work and like the really almost concrete poetry, but the like surreal things. William Burroughs doing some of that stuff as well. And so I thought, I'd like to try that. And E. Cummings, of course. And thought, I'd like to try some of that. And it looks fun and doing that. And it was. And then you go back to the narrative. And then I went through a thing where I looked at prose poems that people were doing, like other writers. And I thought, that looks really cool. And I like the form. It's really quick hit and you can really jump around in it, like stream of conscious if you want. And did a lot of that. And then I noticed there was also a phase about animating objects that aren't people and then writing it from their perspective if I could. So now it's kind of that and a mix of the more narrative poems that I went back to, and that's kind of what I do mostly now.
Right on. When you're talking about the surrealism and stream of consciousness that's sort of playing out from an intuitive part of the mind, and you have your notebooks everywhere, leads me to ask something I always like to talk to people about, whether or not dreams play any role in your writing, and do you do dream journaling at all?
Yeah, I don't do dream journaling, but dreams do play a part. Definitely have weird dreams, or you'll write down weird phrases that are in your head when you wake up from dreams, or that what you were experiencing. Done a few poems where I just wrote about the dream because it was so weird in itself.
Yeah.
But it's usually bits or parts of it or elements that kind of grow into something else, or lines in your head, things like that. But yeah, dreams play a huge part for me.
Sometimes dreams come and you just write straight from what came out of the subconscious there when you wake up.
Yeah. Sometimes it's complete dreams, and other times it's just elements of the dream usually, and there are single lines that get kind of stuck in your head, and you write them down. And but yeah, dreams definitely play a huge part in my writing.
Very cool. And I want to get back into a little bit also about the books. You talked about having so many different projects, eight at a time during these days. What are you working on currently? And can you also talk a little bit about the collaborative process? You've done some sort of split books with people in the past. How does your energy change when you're doing a collaboration?
Yep. The project's doing now is doing a collaboration with Yanni Carlson, the great Swedish artist.
Yeah.
And I do the writing part, and of course he does the illustrations, and he's just a fantastic artist, I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
And doing just putting the finishing touches on a book with the New York Quarterly called Minotaur Snow. And there's a chapbook coming out soon with Concrete Meat Press in Adrian Manning out of the UK. It's called Orphan Dancer. So working on that stuff. And then those are the books that are kind of in the works to be done. And then the other ones are in process of either writing them or editing them or assembling them or reassembling them. So because I see things visually, so I can't put a book together on the computer. I have to print it out and then manually put it together on the bed and then make sure I get the flow right. That's the only way I can see it. And then I have to reassemble it back onto the computer and edit that way. And that's the way I've done all the books because I can't do it on the computer. I know many people can, but I can't. So.
Has it always been that way? So do you have like 100, 200 pages that you're putting out on the floor? Or how do you work with that?
Yeah, that's how it goes. Like the shorter ones, it's okay, but when you get up to like 300 pages or something like that, I mean, it's all over the floor and the bed and the dressers, and you're trying to work it out. The second part of your question with the collaborative is it's kind of different with each person, but I like doing the collaboratives because you get a different voice. You can either start with just a concept, or you can just go blind and they'll do a section, you'll do a section. And I did one book with Ben John Smith, Horsley's Trash, and Richard Wink, and it was basically a crime noir, and it was illustrated by an artist in Australia. But we basically just would write a section and create characters, and then the next it would be sent off to England, and then Richard Wink would write a section, continuing off my section, and then he'd send it to Australia, and then Ben would do the next section, and we just kept going around and around and around till we made an actual story with characters, but we would all add on our own bits, and so that was a lot of fun. We did another one where Ben just wanted each of us to do a stream of consciousness, and we put them together loosely, and that was fun too. But I like doing collaborative projects because you get to see people's voice where in a way that you don't before. And a lot of these writers, I mean, they're really cool guys. Like you meet guys like you, Ben, and people that you can work with, and it's awesome.
That collection, The Stream of Consciousness that you did with Ben John Smith, that's actually where I first came across your work back when I was just starting out.
Oh, yeah?
2014 or something. I think there was an E version online that I came across and found your work. You weren't on Facebook or social media back at that time. I remember looking you up and trying to find you and like, who's this writer? So that was my first introduction to you.
That's very cool. Yeah. At that time I wasn't on social media, so.
Yeah, I'd just gotten on at that point. I was finding all these new people and the different sites. Did you used to publish at Dead Snakes, that Stephen Jarrell Williams site? Yeah, I think that's
that's cool. Yep.
I was first reading your work.
Yep, I'd see your work around too. You'd see these familiar names at these places, and you'd be looking around, and but you'd never meet the people, right? That was the good thing now. Like I said, with social media, so you connect, you actually know the people now outside of their work.
Yeah, absolutely. So you also touched on the editing process there. How does that play in your work? How much editing goes into a poem? from original form, and how much do you tinker with it? Are you trying to keep the original thrust that came through?
Yeah, I do almost no editing, like in terms of the poem itself. Like I'm a big component of, you just kind of write it in a space and time, and then that's kind of the way it is. Like you could wake up a week later and you're kind of a different person in a different headspace, and that poem doesn't belong there. So I really don't touch any of the actual material. It's just grammatical and spelling that I go back to, but I don't change anything, like usually one word. I just write it as it's written and then just leave it like that for that space and time. Then that's the headspace you're in. Yeah.
I do that. Yeah, I think of it similarly. It's almost like catching a snapshot of mood and emotion. I think about that.
Exactly, yeah.
So I want to get back to environment a little bit. Being up there in Canada, you posting pictures of bears wandering through your neighborhood sometimes. What's it like living in that space where you might run into a grizzly at any given moment?
It's good. It's good for the mind, because you can write about things, like you write about present things, but you can write about things from the past too, because they have time to ruminate, because you can cut out a lot of the noise. Like if you were probably in a crowded city, it may not be as easy to cut out that noise. But here, basically the town is right in the middle of the forest. So, when the bears walk down the street, they don't see a street. They think they're just walking in the forest still, I'm sure. And they're just looking for garbage or an easy meal. But, yeah, if you go out at night here, you got to be careful because they're walking down the street. So.
Very cool. Well, I really appreciate your time here and sticking with me through the technical difficulties we had on the last episode. Bearing with me here today as the computer seems to be going in and out. But I want to turn the floor over to you. I know you've got a lot of poems there to share with us, and let you dive into some of your work.
Sure. This first one is called A Cemetery is No Place for the Living. All those wilting flowers and long silences behind uninvited black wrought iron. A cemetery is no place for the living. Those that walk the grounds come with such a heavy sadness. In many ways, they are just waiting their turn. The gravedigger is paid to be there, but he could have worked anywhere. The sprinklers on a timer, all those rows of stone. And I guess this one's a little lighter. It's a little longer too, but it's called Do You Want to Know About the Japanese Yakuza? I am sitting in the mall food court enjoying the second half of a submarine sandwich. This table of young guys is having a belching contest and throwing food at other patrons. Families quickly get up and lead their children away. This only spurs the antics on. I feel a piece of food hit my back. I say nothing and keep eating. The lettuce on my sandwich is wilty, like the elderly in neglected sun chairs. When the table of young guys gets up to leave, they linger. One leans over my table and keeps breathing heavily as though he is winded. Do you mind? I glare at the kid. His bigger friend comes over in a muscle shirt that shows off his hairless nipples. Those are cute. Do they come in extra large? The heavy breather laughs even though he knows he is not supposed to. There a problem, old man? The muscle shirt stands over me. If you stare at me any harder with those puppy dog eyes, I say, people will think that we are together. Puppy dog eyes does not know what to say. You gonna let him talk to you like that, Trev? I hear a voice from behind. I turn to find 4 more of them. Listen to your idiot friend, I say. He seems like a real keeper. Maybe I should just knock your ass out. What do you think about that, old man? I think you should take turns, instead of all trying to lose your virginity at once. That's so. Space things out, I say. Don't be in such a hurry to fluff each other's pom-poms. Puppy dog eye seems visibly upset. Face is red like a stoplight. Maybe we should go outside, old man. I agree. You should all go outside. Fresh air is good for the lungs. This guy's crazy, Trev. I hear another voice from behind. I wipe my mouth with my napkin and take out my big hunting knife. That beautiful slicing noise it makes as I slowly remove it from its black leather sheath. Do you want to know about the Japanese Yakuza, I ask. Everyone grows real quiet and steps back. Put your hand down on the table, Slim, I say to the skinny kid who was breathing heavily. Stretch your fingers out as far as they go. One of the ones from behind me wraps puppy dog eyes on the chest and they walk off. Not wanting to know about the Japanese Yakuza. I finish my drink and empty the trash into the garbage. Then I head up the escalator to make a dentist appointment. The receptionist has one of those headsets, so I can never tell if she is talking to me. There are 3 people in the waiting room. They all have cavities. I can tell without even looking. A giant poster of gingivitis on the far wall keeps tonguing itself. Warnings of gum disease everywhere. To keep the fear lobby happy. Someone has to be afraid. It may as well be you.
Awesome piece. I have that calling card of yours, the sarcasm and wit in there. One of the currents that runs through your work.
Yeah. This one's much shorter. It's called A Mistress to No One But Time. Cordant umbilical, a mistress to no one but time. That flurry of falsehoods, coats of paint sporting jam zippers, dredging lakes of hard sink water with cracked cups for hands, persistent blackheads in the facial tick Lyme disease grass, when something catches your eye like an errant frisbee, from freckled double-dare water-winged children of the long splashing summer.
Are these from a particular collection that you're reading from right now?
The first one isn't published yet, or in a book, and that last one isn't either. And the Yakuza poem is in a book. It's assembled, but it's not published yet either. So
Okay,
it's
right.
one of the 8 projects.
Yeah.
This one is in a book already, and you actually published it for Peregrine Muse.
Okay, right.
Hacky Sack Kids. They stand in a circle, 5 of them in the school parking lot, trying to keep a tiny knitted kickball filled with hockey up in the air. They all wear these baggy shorts that they have to keep pulling back up, most impractical considering their present enterprise. Like sporting flippers while doing wind sprint, but I must admit they are pretty good. All these months trying to beat their personal best. A collective awe going up each time they get close and fail.
Oh.
Yeah.
Before we go on to the next one, a couple more influences I wanted to ask you about in your work. One of them being music and the other love of cats. Can you talk a little bit about how those aspects fit into your life?
Yeah, music's a huge part. I should have said that too with the rituals too, about reading beforehand, also listening to certain music beforehand. When I write, it's just classical music because it's you don't want someone else's words messing up what you're trying to do. But different music beforehand and then classical music when you're writing. So music's very important. Cats, just because they have the most personality and style, and they're basically our overlords, so, got to give them respect.
Yeah, well,
And fine art also plays a lot, too. I find a lot lately. I'm doing a lot more with paintings, or writing about paintings and that, because I love fine art, so that also goes in there, mixes with the cats and music.
Okay, cool. Some like ekphrastic pieces where you're reflecting on the work themselves.
Yeah, stuff like that. I didn't even know what that meant originally when somebody said about that type of poem, but that's basically, I like to do that, look at certain paintings, and then just kind of break them down, or what you feel from them, or the impressions you get from them, and the images and that, and I find that fun, so I've done that a lot lately.
Very cool. And what are your most recent books that have come out this year?
Well, the last one that did, first there was a chat book by, I'm sure you know him, Tom Bakeless in New Jersey. Between Shadows Press, and it's called Night Spotting. And then one that just came out with Marathon Books. Yeah, here it's called A Tripwire for the Soul.
Nice.
And so those are the newest ones. And like I said, there's one coming out the New York Quarterly soon, and with Concrete Meat Press, and then the one with Yanni as well through his press, Spence Capacci. So
when you're working with the artist, you might have already touched on this. Is he interpreting your words after you send them, or are y'all just going with pieces that you both already created and merging those together, or is it the other way around where you're writing based on his?
Yeah, it's always I send the writing to them, and then they basically Yanni will do whatever he wants to do, and to play off that, or like when I've worked with Marcel too, you know Marcel Herms, another fantastic artist, and same thing. I'll send the manuscripts. He'll just read a bit, get the idea, then he'll go to a shop and turn out the magic, and that usually ends up being covers. Or we did like a short story book, and every story he did a drawing for, based on what he got from reading it. So that was very cool. And it's almost always like that. It gets sent to the artist, and then they just have full, complete freedom to do what they want. And, they always hit it out of the park, these guys. And the only ones that have been different, or the other way around, is I worked with James Modge for a few, and I specifically sought out his cover art, and I would ask, I have a book, and I have something in mind for this guy, use this piece of art specifically. So that was the other way around. But usually I send it to the artist, and they work afterwards.
Very cool. Like a reverse ekphrastic on their end. I guess it's all ekphrastic, one genre to the other.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. Short story collection. Are you still dabbling in that? Do you have any other thoughts about releasing more fiction?
Yeah. I want to do another short story collection soon. The first one I was through Alien Buddha, and it was what's it called? Only Greek gods should be worshipped from behind. And it's through Alien Buddha, and that was with Marcel Herms, and that's the one where he illustrated every story, and his illustration starts before the story, so that it kind of gives you a really good visual going in, instead of placing it at the end or in the middle or something. Really wanted his visuals are so awesome anyway, but I wanted it to hit the reader first, and so we were both proud of that book. It's pretty good. And but I want to do another one soon. It comes less naturally than poetry, so it is more work. And I think doing the short stories is probably just trying to work up to a novel. That's the end game for concentration. But it's hard to stay concentrated that long to do a novel right now. But that's what I'm building towards.
Okay, right on. Pretty cool. All right, well, I'll turn things back over if you got a few more you'd like to share with maybe to...
This one's a true story. It's but when I was a kid, I played house league soccer with this kid across the street, and I guess his family borrowed money from the wrong people or whatever, but so I was woken up in the morning. The title is 2 Car Bombs in One Night. But, 2 car bombs in one night. It shook the entire house, startled me out of a dead sleep, in that back bedroom along Burnick Drive. 9 years old, and my father rushing past me down the hall, already dressed. The neighbors gathering on the street once they felt it was safe. A driveway full of cars on fire. The family directly across the street apparently owed money to someone you should not owe money to, and this was their warning. 2 car bombs in one night. I used to play house league soccer with their youngest son. The family moved away 2 nights after that, left many of their belongings behind in a hurry, and those many charred out bits of cars shoveled back out off the street. I never slept too well after that. So yeah, that was a car bomb night. That was interesting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. This one's more of just a fun piece. I don't know much about it, but I guess Bitcoin is a popular thing nowadays. So, and cryptocurrencies and that type of stuff. So this one's called Bitcoin Bill. Bitcoin Bill keeps telling me about all the money he has, but he says I can't see it and he can't see it either, even when I ask, which seems like magic to him, which I guess it is when you consider the scale of the hustle and the sheer lunacy it takes to talk about your invisible money with others and how rich everyone could be.
Yeah, man. Money's already a spell, and now it's an invisible spell.
Yeah. Where I was talking about the more surreal or stream of consciousness pieces, I have one here like that. It's called Captain Beefheart Never Once Passed Federal Inspection. Even Zappa was dismissive at times, asking for the meat and none of the gristle. When your own patron starts to question the slaughter, the entire operation is in danger. And wider society, not a chance. They want their grade A ground chuck stamp of bloody approval, and all that requires, which the good captain was never willing to do, which is why Captain Beefheart never once passed federal inspection. The brass would have cried foot and mouth and put the whole damn enterprise down. Have you seen that Angus meat? I swear you'd think the bloody beast never bled at all, probably did Pilates to slim down, all to impress Mr. Eat Me Alive. The dishes cleared away and most the working human mind, safe as milk from these very same cows. And could do another one. It's called Boys. It's about a kid growing up where I was. He drowned out at the water, and it's the same water where my uncle drowned when he was 9. So it's about that. And my father, I guess, enrolled me in swimming lessons like at 3 months old because he wanted to make sure that his sons knew how to swim after his brother died. So it's called Boys. Sink or swim. Wasn't that the old adage? My father's little brother drowned down at the local dock when he was 9, so I started early. Was a competent swimmer by 5, a dolphin in human form just a decade later. A pair of goggles that never seemed to fit right. That reek of chlorine through my hair at all times. And when I started high school, another death in that same dark water that took my uncle. The older brother of an old grade school classmate this time. Too drunk to know the danger. That he couldn't swim like he thought he could. The body found 2 days later. Not the last in this handsome little commuter town.
Dolphin in human form. It's cool.
Yeah. Got pretty good at swimming after a while. I can read another one. It's called Welch. Do not welch on your bets. Better still, don't place any bets, and we will not need to have this conversation. Shit happens, almost always in the bathroom. But it is the spillage that concerns me. More importantly, your flimsy claptrap approach to martyrdom. That way you get behind everything, even in traffic, never making it up, and the men that come to my door asking after you are sorely lacking in manners. I tell them I don't know where you are, which is the truth in a mental sense. Some of these boys are rather barrel in the chest, always angry when they leave. I would hate to be their wives if they have them.
Very cool. All right. Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing about your work, your life, and some of your material here tonight. Like I said, big fan of yours. Been admiring your work for a long time, so it's been awesome getting a chance to chat with you here tonight. And hopefully we can do it again in the future. Anything you want to leave with people about where they can find your work or connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest place to find the work is probably Amazon. There are some individual presses if people want to reach out. And also the easiest place to find me is Facebook. I'm on there with, most of the writing community. And I just want to thank you, man, for having me on. As said, mutual respect, big fan of your work as well. And it'd be great to get to sit down and talk again sometime.
Okay, fantastic. Let's do it. And I appreciate everyone tuning in, listening to the show. And until next time, Selah.